This is the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Over the years, people have asked me, when did you know for sure you wanted to be a priest? Well, about 6 months after I was ordained. People are usually surprised by the answer, but I think it's the truth. I think most people would have some hesitation or doubt about making such a huge decision. Because I knew that once I said yes, once I was ordained, there could be no turning back. But love always requires taking a risk. Those who get married do the same thing. As the poet Robert Frost wrote years ago, 2 roads diverged in a wood. And I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference.
It's the Drew Mariani Show on Relevant Radio.
That's Father Rocky. He's going to be stopping by the studio. We'll get you plugged into all things Holy Week. You might have had a chance to be with him throughout his Lenten lessons. You might join him on a regular basis at the Rosary, Family Rosary across America. So he's kind of been our guide throughout Holy Week. Thought I'd invite him into the studio every Holy Week. I like to get him in at least for a day. And first of all, thank you for your Lenten lessons. And, of course, everything else that's going on here. I thought I'd touch base with you on that. And we'll talk to you a little bit about it. I know people can still plug into some of this.
Sure.
What's your favorite Lenten lesson? It was one of the things I was thinking about.
Well, you got the Lenten lessons on the Mass, right? And the Lenten lessons on the sacrament. So the background for that is, remember back in 2010, you and I were here. We had that one-day workshop at Wyncliffe, and the takeaway from that was anybody who was on air had to have a Facebook page. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going, oh my goodness, the last thing I want to do is another way for people to get a hold of me. I've got, a couple of emails and physical addresses and phone numbers. But anyway, I got on Facebook. This was in 2010. Yeah. And then about 2 years later, I thought, okay, my Lenten fast this year is I'm going to write a little lesson about the Mass every day, find a picture on the internet that kind of describes that. And that way, if I do it publicly, I have to deliver, right? So I wrote about the Mass because I wanted to teach this to people. I love it. I practice it. And I want to share that with others.
Sure.
So then some years went by, and Damien Schmidt, we call the Duke of Digital around here, he said, hey, what do you think if we send out your Lenten lessons of the Mass to people on our email list? I said, I think it's a great idea, but I don't know where those things are. They're lost in the cloud somewhere. He said, no, I kept them. I said, Damien, you kept them. How'd you do that? Well, I made a file, and I've got the text. I've got the pictures. I said, well, go right ahead. So that was a number of years ago, and I think first year, like 6,000 people signed up for the Lenten lessons on the Mass. And the next year, they had 20,000 sign up for them. And then the next year, Damon said, we've got to make them into videos. I said, no, we don't do video, and I don't have time to do video. Well, we have to make them into videos. I said, no, I don't have time to video. So anyway, I'm not going to win this argument. I said, okay, I got 2 days next week, Monday afternoon and Tuesday afternoon. Bring in your cameraman, and I'm just going to talk. Right. I'm going to take it from start to finish, and then you got to dice them up and make them into the little videos. And they were really tangible because I showed them the sacristy. I showed them the things they never see. I taught them the secret prayers. I showed them the tabernacle. So it's really tangible. So people like that kind of stuff. Last year, I think we sent them to like 500,000 people a day. I mean, they've been seen millions and millions of times. And then Rich last year said, well, you got to have new content. I said, I don't want to do new content because you always make me work around here, just like you, right? You can never do enough, right? And I said, okay, well, we'll do Lenten lessons on the sacraments, but that's going to be a lot harder to do. Yep. That's not me just winging it, all right? I have to do my research. I have to write those things out. I have to make sure they're correct, right? And besides, it's going to be catechetical, and that could be boring. It's not like telling stories.
It's true.
All right? And so those Lenten lessons of sacraments, they're only going to work if Dan Axton and his team does great post-production work, kind of putting the graphics in there and B-roll and all that rest. And they did a great job.
Is there one that's the most popular?
Well, there is. The one that came out today.
Yeah. Really? Today?
Yes, the one that came out. What is the life of a priest?
That's crazy.
I mean, I probably received, 7 or 8 emails or text messages. People really, really like that.
Yeah. I just heard it.
Because I started out by saying, people asked me, when did I know for sure I wanted to be a priest? I said, well, about 6 months after I was ordained. I said, really? I said, yeah, you always take a little risk. And so I tell the story. It was about 6 months after I was ordained. It was a weekend. I was just busy. And there's a wedding. There were confessions. There was a funeral. And there was also counseling a family who lost a teenage son tragically. And I went to bed on Sunday night exhausted physically and mentally, emotionally, and just very happy because I didn't have any time for myself that weekend. Yeah. I was with people the whole time, right? Yeah. So that's what Ken would explain there.
So what's coming up here for Holy Week? I know that you're going to be leading the Stations of the Cross, right, on Friday?
Yeah, well, we're going to have the Stations of the Cross twice this week. It's on our website. I think we're doing them Thursday at noon because we're not doing the Mass at noon because that's the Mass in the evening. Right. And then we'll also do them in the evening on Friday. And you can find it on our website when we do that. But we're also going to be broadcasting the Stations Cross live from the Shrine of Christ's Passion, as we do every year on Good Friday. Right. And for the last 3 years, the Bishop of Gary has led those, and which is great because they get thousands of people, especially if the weather's nice. So I'd say for our listeners, plan ahead for Holy Week. And I always like to attend, if I can, the Chrism Mass on Holy Thursday morning or on the Tuesday, depending on the diocese where they have it. And then the Holy Thursday services in the evening, which are a little bit longer, usually around 7 o'clock. And they have the washing of the feet. Mm-hmm. They have the procession, Holy Eucharist after Mass. And then the Blessed Sacrament is reserved on a side altar. Yeah. It's called a monument, and they have flowers and oriental rugs and lots of candles. And it's a side altar, and you stay there in adoration till midnight. And they've got Good Friday the next day, which is a day of fasting and abstinence, right? Yep. A very serious thing. I remember growing up in our house, we had to go to our room between noon and 3 and be quiet.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, what great practice.
I think it's because my mom figured that's the way she can get us to be quiet, right?
And you were one of how many again?
I was one of 8. So you go upstairs, go to your room, close the door. You got to be quiet until 3 p.m. because Jesus is on the cross. Like, how are you going to question that, right?
Wow. That's a great practice. You and I often talk on Thursday about a practice that my mother always used to do.
Did you ever do it?
Yes. She kind of
Philly,
initiated visiting 7 different churches.
Was it easy to do in Philly?
No, well, yes. We were outside of Philadelphia. It was more suburban. There were churches around. We had to get in a car and drive to multiples of these. But why don't you share that? Because none of them may be aware of that.
All right.
either.
So it's a tradition goes back to Rome, where on Holy Thursday after the Mass, you try to visit 7 churches and visit our Lord and Saint. Now, that's pretty easy in Rome, right? Because there's a church on every corner, and some of them are really, really beautiful. We used to do it as a kid in Mundelein, Illinois. That was harder. And the other thing is we tried to get it done before midnight, so we'd stop at the Dairy Dream, which had just opened that weekend. So we get ice cream and a banana split before Good Friday started, right? And Good Friday started at midnight. So we'd go to Santa Maria del Popolo in Mundelein. We'd go to St. Mary of the Annunciation. We'd go to St. Joe's. Wow. We'd go over to St. Teresa's. It's hard to do that. But in the city in Chicago, just on the north side, you can do it.
Right? There you go.
You can go to St. Mary of the Angels. You can go to St. John Cantius. You can go to St. Stanislaus. You can go to St. Hedwig's. You can go to Holy Trinity Parish. You go to Holy Name.
I'm sure every city's got churches close. Philadelphia was like that, too. Yeah. Practically every city.
A little bit hard in Manhattan, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's grab a call for you, too. Go to McLean, Virginia. That's the Washington, D.C. area. Bob, good afternoon. You're on with Father Rocky.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, good afternoon. Father, I've spoken to a number of priests, and I wanted to ask you, what is your most challenging duty as a priest? The other priests responded, the sacrament of reconciliation.
What's the most challenging thing for me to do as a priest?
Yep.
I think it's just to be available for people and always be cheerful, right? And if you're tired, pretend you're not tired, right? Priests are ordained to be there to serve people. So I tell people in one of my lessons, I try to wear my Roman collar out in public because that is a please disturb me sign. Yeah. You've seen the do not disturb in hotels.
Yeah, I heard you say that the other day.
Mine is please disturb me. I'm there to help you, right? Confessions are a joy because people need to be heard. When I was younger, I could do 4 hours straight, but now I have to take a little break, right? Maybe take a little break and you help out. Love to do that. I would say, the biggest challenge is to be available for people, right?
Yeah. And I appreciate the fact you wear your clerics out. I mean, it says I'm a Catholic priest, and you never know when somebody might need confession.
Yeah, it got me bumped up to first class in American Airlines.
Did it really?
Yeah, it did. And
God bless those Catholics.
And it was chicken Parmesan.
Wow, nice. One of my favorites.
Yeah, how about that? We're right there the Lent, and they put the priest in the first class. I'm thinking, what would Pope Francis think? Here's that jet-setting priest. Yeah.
Well, hopefully it wasn't a Friday.
No, it was a Wednesday, right?
Yeah, that's something. That's great. Yeah. See, you're a witness. But I felt bad. A lot of priests abandoned their collar after the scandal because I know a lot of people didn't want to be.
Yeah, I know, but most people they understand that. But here in the United States, you're rarely treated poorly wearing your clerics.
Are you better respected here than other countries?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Much better.
I didn't realize that. I would have thought.
There's much more history in Europe. Plus, they got free class in America.
That's true.
How about that?
I love it. Well, we only have a few minutes here. I want to ask you another thing about Holy Week if we can, because a lot of people have loved ones that have fallen away from the faith.
Right.
How can Catholics who've maybe fallen out of, the regular routine of going to church, I mean, we have these Priesters who show up at Christmas and Easter. How can they reclaim the beauty of the Triduum, the days that lie ahead, and really engage in the special grace-filled time of year in a new way? I mean,
I sent you that article. There's a resurgence of the faith in France. A lot of young people are coming to faith. What I've seen with young people is if you expose them to a beautiful and reverent liturgy, it gets their attention, and then they want to dress up. Some of these youngsters, they're like retro. They dress up like they're actors and actresses from the 30s, got their hair all coiffed, very sophisticated clothing, right? And the liturgies are done very well. That takes a lot of work, right? It takes practice. I was in the Cathedral of Helena, Montana last week, and I was so impressed with how well they do things. So I walked in the morning. There's already 50 people there sitting in the pews praying in silence, right? And the tabernacle's right in the middle. Everything is just well done. It's not retro. Right. It's not Trinity. It's just well done. Right. And then there's 3 servers. One day it's 2 boys and their sister, and the next day it's 3 boys. They're all in their white surplice, their black cassock, but the real clincher, they all had black shoes and black socks on. Right? Not the
Weissenikers.
Yeah. And I said, okay, somebody's paying attention here. And then I met the liturgist. He's about 6'4", 240. And a professional man. And I said, thank you. You work very hard on that because it makes a big difference. If you take those things seriously, do them well, it attracts people. The liturgy is transforming.
I agree.
Right? Beautiful architecture, beautiful music. And you can do beautiful music in a variety of genres, right? We've seen that at the C conferences. We saw that at the National Eucharistic Congress this summer. It wasn't all Tridentine and Gregorian, right? But it was well done, and that takes hard work, and that takes practice.
Well, it's those transcendentals, right? The good, the true, the beautiful. That's what draws us to God. And if you have that at Mass, good preaching, good music, beautiful liturgy, your heart gets lifted.
I don't know how many times, Drew, people have told me, Father, that was a great Mass. I said, thank you. I had absolutely nothing to do with it. I just read the black and did the red.
You have a certain reverence at Mass, which is nice.
But that's something I learned from St. Josemaria, right? In the centrality of the Holy Eucharist. Yeah. And then if you take it seriously, other people take it seriously.
True. Really is true. Right? Let me grab a couple calls for you here because we got Bridget, who's 6 years old. I know you'd love to hear from
Bridget
in Spring, Texas. Hi, Bridget.
Hi, I'm well.
I'm very happy to hear that you are well. You have a very good mother and father who've taught you to speak correctly. And what's your prayer intention, Bridget?
I'd like to thank all the priests and wish them a holy years. And I'd like to wish you guys a happy late home Sunday, and I'd like to invite you to our house.
How cute.
Oh, you want to invite all the priests in the country to your house?
Oh.
Wow. You got a big heart, Bridget. I hear your dad chuckling in the back. Thank you for your big heart and your kind wishes. Pray for the priests every day so that they can serve the people as Jesus served the people.
Thanks, Bridget. And thank your parents. I know they're listening too.
Yep.
You're raising a great daughter, 6 years old, and talks like that. Fantastic.
John, I'm well.
I'm not good.
I'm still saying I'm good, right?
Yeah.
I still
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
No, I'm well.
I'm well. Wow.
I have listeners that correct me all the time.
That's an adverb.
The I and the me, and it's
I
it's
can't get it straight.
Good and well. I got to leave it right there because we are up against the bottom of the hour break here tonight, 7 p.m. Rosary. Right?
7 p.m. Rosary, and then we've got Close to Jesus to the Last at 6 p.m. Central Time.
That's a great series to listen to. Stations of the Cross. You can hear Father at 3 Central on Friday. The chaplain is going to move to an hour earlier. But I hope you have a very blessed and holy week. Thanks for being here. It's always good to spend some time with you.
Glad we can be with you and our entire audience.
You can join me and listen on the Relevant Radio app to The Drew Mariani Show live each weekday at 2 to 5 Central. Thanks for listening.